Hey guys, Eddie back with Couch Talk. Welcome back to the show. If it's your first time with me, welcome to the show. Guys, please hit like, please hit subscribe, turn your notifications on. It really helps me out with the algorithm, and I need all the help I can get. So today I've got some bad news. I've just done an in-depth, more thorough analysis of the coming conflict between the United States of America and the People's Republic of China. As you know, tensions are pretty high between us and have been increasingly declining over the last few months, and I think that we are heading toward an imminent conflict, most likely over Taiwan. As you know, the People's Republic of China wants Taiwan to remain under its fold, and America would very much like for that not to be the case. Taiwan is a very important strategic zone. That peninsula, that island, that shipping lane that goes through that strait is just, I think it's one of the most voluminous shipping lanes in the world. So like literally, I think I read somewhere that almost 50% of shipping traffic in the world moves through that strait. So it's a very important place. Not to mention, they on the island of Taiwan currently produce, I believe, 65% of the world's superconducting microchips. And I don't know how much you guys know about that, but you basically use them for everything. Your telephone, your TV, your car, everything, right? Now, luckily for us, America still produces most of the designs, but they still manufacture most of the chips in Taiwan. So it's a very important place. And whoever holds that domain, it's likely that if China were to take over that area, that Taiwan would probably destroy that chip manufacturing plant. But even so, I mean, it could be rebuilt. Whoever controls that area has a significant strategic and economic advantage in the world platform. Now, I've gone through, I think, maybe 10 or 15 different large-scale items with which I have gauged between China and the United States who I believe would come out on top. I don't claim to be perfect in this area, as I do not have a complete knowledge of all American and Chinese war platform systems. But as most of you know, this is kind of my wheelhouse, right? This is what I studied in college, studied military history and military tactics. And if there's anything that I've ever really had a gift for, a passion for, it is strategy, gift for tactical thought. Many of you know that I play chess. I love games of strategy. It's my passion. And so I do a lot of studying in my downtime on precisely this topic. And I'm going to start by showing you this. I mean, this is the columns, China versus U.S. And I mean, just by looking at it, you can see that over here, China has all these advantages and the United States has very little. As a matter of fact, I even had to start listing some United States disadvantages because they wouldn't fit in the Chinese column. So it broke my heart to look at this, to see that we are not actually the invincible engine that we once were. But let's talk about the individual areas that I have gauged a difference between China and America, and to discuss who has the advantages in these areas and why. All right, let's start with leadership. Leadership is a complicated scenario. On the one side, you have Xi Jinping, and he's basically a one-man show. Now, that can have advantages and it can have disadvantages. One of the advantages of being a one-man show is that you can make very decisive decisions very, very quickly. You don't have to go through this bureaucracy to get what you need to get accomplished in a wartime, in a high crisis high stress scenario, you can just say, this is what I want to do, and then it happens, right? Whereas in America, like even to declare war, we have to get Congress involved. It takes a considerable amount of time. Yes, the president can do many things on his own, but there are many things that the president cannot do on his own, and there's many things that the president needs to run through to accomplish. Either running it through the Senate or running it through Congress, running it through the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who also help share in the decision-making process. Now, one of the disadvantages to Xi Jinping's one-man show leadership, and even though he's got, of course, his military advisors, you can get overwhelmed being a micromanager, right? Especially if you're trying to manage the entire war front, you can find yourself managing too many different facets at once, especially in a complex world stage like ours, where he'd most likely be fighting all of NATO, not just America, which can get even more complicated, right? Now, what I've done today is basically just track China against the United States directly, one-on-one, over a conflict that I perceive will take place over Taiwan. But keep in mind, this is a very narrow facet, right? It's one specific area, but it's also one nation against one nation. Almost without fail, if the United States went to war, most of NATO would go to war with us. But not necessarily, right? I'm seeing some people like France say, hey, America's thing in Taiwan, that's on them. And they're even showing some signs of support for China. Some of the other nations have followed suit as well. So we may, in fact, be in it for ourselves. In truth, this game is all about who is going to be the superpower in the world, right? Is it going to be America or is it going to be China? Because those are really the only two options. Russia's really not where they were, 35 years ago. They really don't have a bid for the top dog in this planet. But China does. So let's look at leadership, right? Now, contrast Xi Jinping to Biden, who is arguably one of our weakest presidents ever. And I'm not saying that because I don't like Biden. I don't like Biden, but I don't like Trump either. It's not like this is about partisanship. This is just about the raw data, right? Biden probably has dementia. He's very old. He needs a teleprompter just to get through a speech. He needs a set of cheat cards just to answer questions during a press conference. And he had, I could go on and on, but suffice it to say that Biden will not be the ideal candidate to make quick decisions, decisive action during a high-stress crisis environment. That is not the person we want. Would Trump do better? Yes, he would. No matter what you think of his policies elsewhere, Trump would 100% be the type of person you would want in the driver's seat during a war scenario. I have to give him that much. I don't like him. I don't like his policies. I don't like his character. But I have to admit, even I have to admit, that Trump would dwarf Biden for his ability to manage a war. Now, obviously, I would say, given those two leaders, that Xi Jinping has the stronger bid, just by virtue of the fact that Biden basically isn't even there. It's obvious that somebody else is running the country through him, probably Obama, but there's a couple other options. Maybe it's done in committee. Point is, even so, that's one extra degree of separation, one extra degree of, wait time when a big decision needs to be made. Biden's not going to be making them. Kamala Harris is not going to be making them. I mean, let's don't kid ourselves. All right, so leadership definitely goes to China. Let's talk about total personnel size. China's obviously got us beat, right? They have like 1.5 billion people in their nation. Their army is much, much larger than ours. Their navy is larger than ours. Now, we have an advantage in the navy, and that is that we utilize aircraft carrier groups, and that has been how we have managed warfare to this point. It's the advantage that we've held in the Navy basically throughout the globe. It's that we have these aircraft carrier groups. One of the reasons that aircraft carrier groups are so powerful is, number one, they all work collectively, right? So there's usually an aircraft carrier, cruiser, a couple of destroyers, maybe a sub or two, and they all have the phalanx system, they all have the Aegis system, they have some amazing sensory capability, but they also have great attack capability, right? They all have a high missile count. That's another big advantage that we've got. So far, we've got more ship-to-ship missiles. So far, we've got more air-to-ship missiles. But China is catching up very fast. And I mean really fast. Now, in the abstract, if it was just an aircraft carrier group against a few Chinese destroyers, the aircraft carrier group would normally win because the aircraft provides the superior firepower, the superior vantage point, right? It's basically, when I was in the Navy, they taught us that if it was a ship against a plane, for the most part, the plane almost always wins. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't win, right? There's countermeasures on basically every platform in the United States arsenal as far as vehicles are concerned. But even so, maybe you stop a missile, maybe you stop two, but, these planes can fire from several miles off. One thing to be clear about the difference between warfare as you may know it from like television, for example, and warfare as you know it from today, you're not like if you watch Top Gun Maverick, you're not two planes that are like following each other around and you can see the other plane the whole time and you're locking a missile on him, shooting. No, you don't see the guy. He's like a good mile or two off, and then you're using information systems to target and to achieve that missile lock system, right? So we would have the advantage in a naval combat situation. However, the problem is China never signed the Intermediate Ballistic Missile Nuclear Arms Treaty, whereas United States and Russia did. So what that means is China has this huge stockpile of intermediate, like 500 to 1,000 mile range ballistic missiles. And they have a missile that's specifically designed to counterbalance our aircraft carrier group advantage. And it's called the Anti-Carrier Ballistic Missile DF-21D. And the thing is a beast, right? And it will take out our carriers at range. And so our carriers will never have a chance to really engage anywhere close to the Taiwan area. Also, this goes part and parcel with another advantage of China is that they're basically already dug in, right? They already have started forming all of these little artificial islands. They dump a bunch of sand, create an island, put a couple of like air defense systems on it or missile systems on it, and it's big enough for the planes to land and take off from, to refuel. So that's a huge supply line advantage, plus a huge defensive perimeter that they've already got set up in the South China Sea. And you know what? It's against treaty. We should have never let them get all of those individual islands set up. But now that we have, they can basically declare a blockade on Taiwan whenever they're ready. And we would be forced to respond to that, right? Every situation with regard to this, we'd be the responders, right? They'd have the initiative. They'd be able to, strike first. They get first strike ability. They get surprise. They get, they get the timing, the weather. They can wait till we're in a kind of geopolitical stress point where, like maybe right in the middle of a heavy election, for example, like this upcoming year, where, tension is high and nobody's really paying attention because we're all focused on our own internal politics, and maybe there's more turmoil with that. Like, what if Trump gets elected from jail or something stupid and the whole world starts losing their mind? That'd be the perfect time for them just to say, you know what, Taiwan is ours now. So they have all the advantages with initiative. They have all the advantages with the intermediate ballistic missile system, which counterbalances our naval advantage. Now, assuming that the naval aircraft carrier groups aren't the chief advantage in the sea, then the next best thing is kind of what China's done, is to have this really large ship count. We built these aircraft carrier groups specifically for sea superiority, but if we don't get that, then they don't actually serve the purpose that we'd originally designed them for. Another advantage that goes to China is they have the highest stockpile of hypersonic missiles collected. And it's not even close, right? You guys saw the hypersonic missile deployed by Russia during this last month. In one of their waves, they used 6 hypersonic missiles, 6 Kim-Jal missiles, to strike 6 points, and all 6 hit, because hypersonic missiles basically can't be stopped by an air defense platform. Part of the problem is, just so you guys understand, it's not just the speed of the missile. Yes, it's hypersonic, so you think, oh wait, it's too fast. It is too fast, but one of the reasons that it's so potent is because if you imagine the curvature of the Earth as it crests the perimeter, right, and it stays pretty low. So a lot of it is not just the speed, it's the altitude. So as it stays pretty low and it crests that hill, and then it's like, oh, then we see it, and then it's like, oh, there's a missile, oh my God, and then it's too late, right? It's kind of like you going over a hill or around a bend in a road, and then, somebody's in the wrong lane and runs right into you. You didn't have time to react because there was an obstruction, right? So we won't have line of sight to this missile until it's too late. And if you guys aren't thinking about what that could be like with a nuclear warhead attached to it, then you're just not considering the options, because China could, at any point in time, with about a 15-minute window, maybe 20 or 30, depending on the location, but usually a 15 to 20-minute window, can wipe something off the map. Any city, boom, off the map, gone. So if you guys aren't thinking about what that could be like they just, boom, missile, and then LA is gone. Boom, missile, and New York is gone. I mean, they've got more than 50 of them. They've got more than 100 of them, as far as I know. Their exact totals aren't known, but I mean, Russia had like 20 or so, and China's got way more than they do, because they didn't have to sign that same treaty, right? And they've been stuck. We fired our own hypersonic missile test last month, and it failed. So we don't even have hypersonics. I mean, we've got them. We've got missiles that break the sound barrier, right? That's not exactly the point, though. We don't have any like intermediate range or long range hypersonic ballistic missiles. Another big advantage is the location, right? Remember, this is Taiwan we're talking about. It's 100 miles from their supply line, 100 miles from their support, 100 miles from the mainland. It's 5,000 miles from us, right? And we can't get close to support our ships with the aircraft carrier groups because they just get blown up. Another big advantage that China has, and this is one of the biggest ones. Remember, I mentioned earlier that the modern warfare battlefield is all about information systems, right? When we send our aircraft up to try to manage air combat, we send up an F-35 and an F-22. F-22 is the dogfighter. F-35 is the information systems control unit. And what they're supposed to do is jam the enemy and focus sensory equipment for us so that we can expose vulnerabilities, so that we can basically make it so that their targeting isn't as effective and ours is more so, right? The problem is, one of China's biggest advantages in this oncoming conflict is their cyber force is enormous. And I mean, when I say enormous, they outman the FBI cyber defense team 50 to 1. 50 to 1. They have more hackers to launch DDoS attacks than the top 8 other nations in the world. And they're all very, very good. Like, you guys have probably heard of some attacks that the Chinese have already carried out on American soil in the form of hacking, getting information or spying, for example, with an air balloon or things like that. They do a lot of information systems work. Specifically, they focused on something called multi-domain precision warfare, and they have a lot of dual-use tech. Basically, there was a recent article. I'm going to try to find it for you and link it below, but I was not smart enough to bookmark it when I had it. But basically, it was like out of a series of 50 different bullet points of emerging technology, China was ahead in like 43 of the 50. And it's like all very important, like next stage warfare stuff, like AI, robotics, cyber attacks, automation. Automation is huge, especially for, one of the weaknesses we mentioned before with a one-man dictatorship is that, to micromanage the entire world, at once is very complicated to manage an entire war, but with enough automation, it can become an easy task. Another big one, really big advantage for China is the cislunar battlefield. They have already recently tested a cislunar weapon, basically like an anti-satellite weapon. So you see where this is going is all of the modern battlefield is about information systems, right? Software is where the game is really being played, where the chess game is really being played. And China is the superior force at disrupting the software of America. They're going to be better at hacking us. They're going to be better at taking out our satellites so we won't have good global positioning systems to use. I mean, basically, without GPS, our missiles don't hit what they're supposed to hit. One of the things that Russia's done recently to, fight off Ukraine attacks is they basically hacked or jammed the missiles as they were coming in, and so their targeting systems malfunctioned and they just missed. Think about a war where we can't hit our targets and they can hit theirs. I mean, that's a scary war field. Economic production, another advantage for China. I was reading the other day that if half of America's Navy were to be wiped out in a war, it would take us 20 years to recover from that loss. If half of China's Navy, which is larger than us, by the way, if half of China's Navy got wiped out in a war, it would take them 2 or 3 years to recover it because they have just ramped up production so much. Part of the reason that we're so far behind is after the Cold War, we didn't have the demand for it anymore, right? One of the reasons America does this kind of like imperialistic, everlasting war, always intervening everywhere they can, trying to get involved in Iraq and Afghanistan and Ukraine and so forth and so on, is to try to maintain the demand for their military contractors that they once had. But like if you look at World War II, Vietnam, we don't have even 1/8 the military contractors that we had in play back then. And we even have some companies that had military subdivisions, companies like General Electric and other places like that, that had military subdivisions that were producing arsenals, producing weaponry, producing electronics necessary for warfare, and now they basically took those subdivisions off because it's just not cost effective. Not only that, it's made our cost efficiencies higher because if the only person who's making weapons for us now is Boeing and Northrop Gunham or something like that, Northrop Gunham, then then they can charge whatever they want, basically. So yet another advantage for China. Another advantage for China is that we've depleted some of our reserves. A lot of our munitions are gone. We've been giving them to Zelensky, who, by the way, has been using them to just shoot civilians, essentially. And for the past month, it's been like a dismal showing. Our U.S. recruiting is way, way down. My CO reached out to me the other day, old CO, said, hey, how you doing? Is there anything I can do to get you to come back? Me, a 41-year-old decrepit has-been that can barely walk across his own house because of his injuries, and they want me back? That's how desperate they are? We are in trouble. We are in trouble. And the people they do have, our recruiting quotas are being missed left and right. And the people that they do have, they have to staff now a gender sensitivity liaison in every single unit and a gender sensitivity officer with each command structure. And I'm like, it's bad enough that we don't have enough people, but to compound that issue, some of the people we have are essentially worthless when it comes to warfare. They will essentially not help at all. It's looking really rough. I gotta say, it's looking really rough. Now, America does have some advantages. We still have a larger Air Force, and we are still more technologically advanced in some facets, right? The aircraft carrier is a big example of our superiority, but China's catching up. They now have what I would call two fully operational aircraft carriers and a third aircraft carrier that's kind of like it was a conversion from another ship over to aircraft carriers. So I'm not sure it would serve in the same capacity. It's not, new level tech, but one place where I think we have a big advantage is unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned submersible vehicles. So UAVs and USVs. The USV, the next generation USV, looks pretty good, right? It's good at finding. It's got good sonar perception. It's got good at finding craft, good at finding mines. It's good at dropping its own. It can be used to trigger defense systems, to flood defense systems, so that we can sneak in when they're vulnerable. So that looks like a good platform that's being rolled out. I don't know. One of the aces we have up our sleeve, an ace in the hole, is we've got some secret tech that we basically haven't shown to anybody. It's been kind of like, kind of just floating, waiting for the right time to use it. I have a suspicion that some of the UAPs that we've seen recently are actually just ours, right? It's actually just secret military tech that has some valuable purpose in the next war, but I don't know what they are. Some of us don't know what, the only way we can get that information is by accessing classified information. I don't currently have an active classified classification, even though I was top secret qualified when I was in the Navy for certain things. It was need to know, but conditionally top secret qualified. Now, one of the advantages I think America has is that there is a lot of political uncertainty within China right now. You've seen some of the protests. Obviously, being a dictator has some advantages, but it has some disadvantages too, right? And the disadvantage is everybody hates you. Having an authoritarian government is great for efficiency, but it's really bad for freedom and for morale, right? So Chinese morale probably isn't where ours is, although our country isn't doing that great in that department either. So another big advantage we've got is there's a demographic decline in China right now. So they basically need to strike soon. They can't wait out another 10 years, even though they're out producing us economically. They really would have to survive and solve some of those demographic problems if they want to just continue to outproduce us and continue to kind of even the playing field. They're also having some trouble with food production, water production and distribution. So we do have some advantages, but guys, just far more on the China column than on the American column. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's an item I've missed, some big advantage that we've got, up our sleeve that I don't know about, or that I just, didn't mention. I want to believe that our personnel are better trained. I want to believe that, but I think that would be a mistake to assume that. I hope that that's one of our advantages, but sorry guys, I know this was a long one, and I know it's been kind of a depressing one, but let me know what your comments are on this. Let me know if you have any other items that you think are important and that should be included, and please put them below. I'll catch you next time on Couch Talk.